The Raptors have a major opportunity right now to bring in some young, awesome talent this offseason in free agency. As Bobby Webster mentioned, this team will be reconstructed with a ton of little moves rather than one giant swing. And Jalen Smith just declined his player option. And Saddiq Bey just had his option not picked up by the Atlanta Hawks. And there is a long list of free agents that fit the Toronto Raptors price point with that mid-level exception, with that traded player exception if, different sign and trade deals were to go down. So we're going to break down some of these guys that are now available to the Toronto Raptors in their hands for Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster to go after to target this offseason for free agent signings. But before we dive into that, folks, again, if you want to stay up to date with everything regarding this Toronto Raptors team, and you're a part of the 51% that hasn't hit that subscribe button just yet, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing regarding this Toronto Raptors team during the offseason, because there is a ton of trade reports, free agency news, draft stuff that's going down during the offseason. Every little thing counts for this Toronto Raptors squad. And one guy that this team, fans of this roster, especially with all the Pascal Siakam Pacers rumors and the trade that ended up happening, one guy that's been linked to the team for a very long time has been Jalen Smith. And now the Raptors have their best possible opportunity to get him. This news came out today that Jalen Smith is entering unrestricted free agency after declining his player option, according to Mike Scotto. So this is a big update because Jalen Smith is a guy that could slot in and be a really, really perfect fit for this Raptors group. Last season averaged 10 points per game, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, and shot 42.5% from behind the three-point line. Shot 42% again from corner threes. He's 6'10". He's 24 years old, so fits perfectly in that Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett timeline in terms of players that we have going on right now. He's a solid defender, doesn't block a ton shots given his size and things like that. And, he's not creating off the ball in terms of his shots. Literally every single one of his threes last season were assisted upon, but that's exactly the type of big man that the Toronto Raptors are looking to bring in to this Raptors group going into next season. Because again, we can take a look at our roster, what we have going on. We have RJ Barrett, we have Scottie Barnes, we have Immanuel Quickley, 3 guys that have the ball in their hands a ton, creates a ton of opportunities and looks that leads to kickouts, that leads to open shots for players that can, one, get in the dunker and finish inside the lane. Jalen Smith is a guy that can do that. He is one of those capable players. But more importantly, can be around the three-point line. That drive happens, and they kick it out to him, and you have a 43% 6'10" three-point shooter that's available for you out there along those lines. That is huge for this Raptors group, especially in the front line where we do have Kelly Olynyk who can space the floor. But outside of that, we're not sure what's going to happen with Chris Boucher. Obviously, Mogbo is a guy that the jump shot isn't necessarily there, but is a pick that I think will be valuable for this team. And then even guys like Gradey Dick, the Gary Trent Jr., whether or not he'll be back, Bruce Brown, we're not sure what those guys are going to be returning or not, but having floor spacing, especially on your front line in terms of options like that, that is huge for this Toronto Raptors group moving forward, especially when our 2 really best scorers are solid shooters but aren't natural three-point shooters, if that makes sense, right? Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett are more so players that are going to be creating their own shots, can get their own set sort of threes, but are going to be slashing the lane, diving the basket, and are quality passers outside of that lane to be able to kick out to different players. Imagine our front line, with a lineup, say, that we throw out there with IQ, RJ Barrett, Scottie Barnes, and the front lines, Jalen Smith and Kelly Olynyk spacing that basketball court for this Raptors team. That's going to be a ton of floor spacing, especially if we have Sasha Vezenkov actually on the team as well. Again, another elite three-point shooter out there on the front lines. This Toronto Raptors team needed to be reconstructed, as we saw Masai Ujiri do at the trade deadline, to build around Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett, and to do that, they needed more shooting. Again, there's question marks about what's going to happen with Jakob Poeltl, his future with this team, but beyond that, pretty well every single move that has been made since the trade deadline has brought in a little bit more shooting to this team. So Jakob Poeltl, that's another guy that could space the floor. Gradey Dick, obviously, right? This team has a lot of elite shooting on this team. So the fact that Jalen Smith, who's probably going to be able to fit into that mid-level exception for the Toronto Raptors out there in the open market, could be got there at this point. That is something that is huge and exciting for this Toronto Raptors team. But there's other guys that are also being made available. As news also came out that the Atlanta Hawks did not deliver a qualifying offer for forward Saddiq Bey, clearing the way for him to become an unrestricted free agent. Now, Saddiq Bey is a guy that we've discussed previously as a dude that could potentially come into the Toronto Raptors as an option via trade, especially when he's at the Detroit Pistons, because another floor spacing forward that isn't horrific on the defensive end. He's had some ups and downs. He's a really solid athlete, but does have some mishaps on those lines. Jalen Smith is the better defender, but Saddiq Bey, when he was out there playing, especially before he went down with injury last year, really was showing signs of being an awesome player for that Atlanta Hawks roster, averaging 14 points per game, 7 rebounds, 1.5 assists. The three-point shot did fall off a little bit last season. That's probably the why he ended up getting cut, but can create his own shot, can slash a little bit more, and it's just one of those wing guys that I could see the Toronto Raptors, if they strike out on a Jalen Smith or one of these players, just come in, handle the ball, do that type of scoring option out there on the wing, because, again, especially off the bench, you can never have as many players that can create their own shots, create their own looks. He has some size, he has some strength to his body, and just being in a Toronto Raptors system where he'll have the reins to be able to do different things out there on the basketball court. Saddiq Bey is another guy I kind of wanted to bring up as a potential option for the Toronto Raptors to look at in free agency. But frankly, there's a ton of players out there in the list of free agents that are out there on the open market. THT, Talen Horton-Tucker, an unrestricted free agent, out there for the Utah Jazz. We know Masai Ujiri's been this close to trading for THT multiple times during this man's basketball career. A versatile kind of wing. He is one of the most up and down players in the entire NBA, but intangible-wise, he has long arms, he's athletic, he's a solid defender, a very, very solid basketball player that, again, can probably fit in that MLE. Alec Burks is a shooter for the Knicks. James Wiseman, I don't think, given our draft situation, we're probably going to go after another center. DeAnthony Melton, again, depending on what we do with Bruce Brown, could be an interesting option as a guy that has elite defense, can shoot the basketball out there on the open market. But really on this list, that I find most intriguing is Patrick Williams. And we've already made videos about him, so I didn't center the video out there along these lines. Now, I'm not sure how much money Patrick Williams is going to make, but if we don't bring back Gary Trent Jr., if Gary Trent Jr. decides to leave the Toronto Raptors, go elsewhere, go to a different team, then Patrick Williams is really the guy I want to see brought into this Toronto Raptors team because, again, made a whole video on him. He can space the floor, he can defend. There's question marks about his development, tons of injuries he sustained over the start of his career, but again, a former number 4 overall pick in a new situation outside of the Chicago Bulls. Rico was talked about it, our lead on Bulls Digest. He came out and said, Patrick Williams is a great player. He'd be heartbroken if he's gone, but it's probably the right time for them to just part ways. The Bulls are rebuilding. They're in a retooling situation right now. So just kind of clearing house is probably what they're going to do with the Chicago Bulls. So the Raptors bring in a guy, Patrick Williams, who can defend the 3 and 4 position, can space the floor, fit in well around Scottie Barnes, different players along those lines. The Raptors have a lot of potential opportunities out here in free agency right now, especially with Saddiq Bey and Jalen Williams. Goodness gracious, I wish Jalen Smith now out there on the board for free agency here. Now it's going to be an exciting time to be a Toronto Raptors fan to see what we actually do in terms of moves being made coming into this off season. But again, we have to figure out what's going on with Sasha. I made a video on him yesterday in terms of if you want any updates there, what's going on at that point. But let me know what free agents you want to see come to join the Toronto Raptors in the off season. You guys best make this far. Again, if you're part of the 51% that haven't hit the subscribe button just yet, you made it this far in the video, hit that subscribe button. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.